Imagine walking around every single day with like a 50-pound lead weight strapped under your coat.
Oh man, that sounds exhausting.
Right. It's heavy, it constantly digs into your shoulders, and it literally dictates how you move through the world. But because you've been wearing it for so long, you've actually learned how to stand up straight.
Yeah, you just adapt to it.
Exactly. You've learned how to smile, how to excel at your job, how to serve your community, and all while pretending that this massive, exhausting weight isn't even there.
You adapt to the pain so perfectly that you forget the weight is even a foreign object. I mean, it just becomes your baseline reality. And you keep it a secret because, well, acknowledging it means acknowledging you have no idea how to take it off.
And that invisible, exhausting burden is exactly what we are getting into today on the Deep Dive. Welcome, everyone. We are doing a special Transformation Talks after the Amen edition today.
Yes, we are.
Diving deep into a truly powerful message from Transformation Ministries' own Pastor Lenore West. But hey, before we unhack her blueprint for dropping that weight, take a second to hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss our analysis of insights just like this one.
You will definitely want to be subscribed for this. I mean, our mission today goes far beyond just a surface-level recap.
For sure.
We are really going to deconstruct Pastor Lenore's core thesis on what it takes to persevere and refuse to give up. We are tracking how she uses the ancient biblical narrative of an unnamed woman to examine human psychology. Specifically, how we handle it when a long-awaited promise suddenly and violently turns into profound pain.
Yeah, and to set the stage properly, we really have to look at the context of the room. So this message was delivered on Mother's Day.
Right.
And the service kicks off with this incredibly poignant tribute by Deacon Jeffrey West Jr. He doesn't just offer, a standard holiday greeting. He frames motherhood as the ultimate living example of the gospel.
It's just such a powerful framing.
It really is. He argues that mothers embody grace, unconditional love, and silent sacrifice long before we as children even possess the vocabulary to understand what those concepts mean.
He highlights the unseen labor. Mothers carry what the rest of the world cannot see, right? Bearing weight without applause. And that beautifully paves the way for Pastor Lenore's entrance, because she steps up to the mic and immediately dispels any notion of, rigid, untouchable perfection.
Yeah, she does.
She brings this refreshing, deeply humorous humanity right into the room.
She is so relatable right out of the gate. I mean, she tells this fantastic story about her husband's deployments early in their marriage.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
While he was away, she would basically take herself out for Mother's Day and buy herself a gift on his dime, naturally.
Yeah, actually.
It's funny, but it's anchored in this real assertion of knowing your own worth, even when the person who usually celebrates you isn't in the room. And then she honors her husband of nearly 42 years, Pastor Jeffrey Demon West Sr., with a hilarious anecdote about a banquet program typo.
The typo.
Yes, the typo that accidentally introduced him as Demon West.
Just a remarkably unfortunate typo for a man with 4 decades in ministry.
Completely.
But, that levity serves a really strategic psychological purpose. She disarms the audience before walking everyone straight into the heavy narrative of 2 Kings chapter 4.
Right, where we meet the Shunammite woman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Historically, the text describes her as a great woman. So she's wealthy, observant, and influential. She notices the prophet Elisha passing by her house regularly, and she decides to literally construct an extension on her house for him.
She furnishes it with a bed, a table, a stool, and a candlestick.
Yeah.
But here is the tension. Despite her wealth and her extraordinary generosity, she is carrying that exact 50-pound lead weight we just talked about.
She has no child.
Right. She has no child, and her husband is advanced in age.
And in that specific ancient Near Eastern culture, barrenness wasn't just a private, personal sorrow. I mean, it carried immense social stigma.
Like a culturally heavy grief.
Exactly, wrapped in shame, often wrongly associated with the lack of divine favor. So she has likely been carrying this invisible burden for decades, watching other women raise families while she builds her wealth and her influence around a hollow center.
Think about the concept of mental real estate for a moment here. This woman goes out of her way to build physical real estate for the prophet, like a place for the presence of God to rest.
And she doesn't do it with an ulterior motive.
Right. She isn't trying to barter a guest room for a baby. But it raises a massive question for you, the listener. How often do you intentionally schedule blank space in your busy life?
That's a great point.
Think of mental real estate like a tightly packed calendar. If you don't aggressively carve out an hour of margin, a spontaneous opportunity or a breakthrough literally has nowhere to land. The Shunammite woman didn't just build a room, she scheduled the blank space.
And the psychological discipline required for that is staggering. Sometimes the strongest people carry the deepest pain silently, yet they don't let it calcify into bitterness. The text shows us that you can still serve, you can still honor your beliefs, and you can actively build environments of hospitality while you are quietly bleeding out from unanswered prayers.
Her disappointment didn't make her cynical.
No, it made her acutely aware of others' needs.
And because she made that physical room without any expectations, she put Elisha in a position where he actually felt compelled to reciprocate.
But that reciprocation is exactly what shatters her carefully built peace.
So Elisha asks his servant, Gehazi, what they can do for her.
And Gehazi points out the obvious elephant in the room. She has no child. So Elisha calls her to the doorway and prophesies that by this time next year, she will be holding a son.
And her reaction is honestly the most human part of this entire narrative. She doesn't throw her hands up in joy.
Not at all.
She doesn't cry tears of relief. She instantly throws up a massive, impenetrable wall of defense. Her exact words are, "Nay, my lord, man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid."
She practically orders him to stop talking. The sermon unpacks this so brilliantly. This woman had already done the agonizing, grueling emotional work of accepting her fate.
Right.
She had buried her hope beneath 6 feet of dirt just to avoid any further emotional damage.
I want to drill down into the psychology of that for a second, specifically this concept of protective pessimism.
Okay.
Is it actually easier for the human brain to survive a continuous dull ache than it is to survive the sharp, devastating spike of disappointed hope?
Oh, absolutely.
We see this behavior everywhere. People reject good news, they sabotage healthy relationships, they downplay their own ambitions, and it's all because they are utterly terrified of the vulnerability that comes with hoping for something and not getting it.
Because the human brain prioritizes survival over happiness. We would rather sit in a dark, predictable room than reach for a light switch that might short-circuit and burn the house down.
Wow, yeah.
What the sermon reveals here is a profound reframing of what authentic faith looks like. We often assume faith means walking around with this blind, bulletproof optimism.
Like nothing ever hurts.
Right. But real faith isn't the absence of wounded emotions.
It's the honesty to admit you are terrified. She basically looks at the prophet and says, I have made my peace with this barrenness. Do not resurrect a hope you aren't prepared to fulfill.
And being that raw with God about your fear of false hope is an authentic expression of trust. She didn't pretend to be fearless. She brought her protective pessimism directly to the source.
But despite her fear, the promise is fulfilled. The text says she conceives and the boy is born, and the sermon notes that she nurtures him for years. Scholars estimate anywhere from 7 to 10 years.
Which is a long time.
Yeah, this isn't just a fleeting weekend of happiness. This is a decade of waking up every single morning, looking at a living, breathing, running manifestation of an answered prayer.
And that extended timeline is what makes the impending crisis exponentially more devastating. The boy is out in the field with his father, and out of nowhere he cries out, "My head, my head."
Oh, man.
He's carried back to his mother, and he dies right there on her lap.
Just the visceral horror of that image. You are the mother, right? You're the person who kisses the scraped knees, the one who fixes everything. You are holding the miracle you were terrified to ask for in the first place, and it literally dies in your arms.
It's unthinkable.
The message draws this piercing parallel to our own lives here.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when an answered prayer, maybe a business you finally got off the ground, a marriage you fought to save, a dream you finally trusted, what happens when that suddenly comes under severe, fatal attack?
It shifts the entire paradigm of spiritual crisis. I mean, it's one thing to believe for a promise you've never seen. It requires an entirely different level of psychological and spiritual fortitude. When the promise manifests, you build your entire life around it, and then it collapses.
And her reaction defies every maternal instinct. She doesn't scream. She doesn't dissolve into a panic attack.
No.
She takes the boy's body, carries him upstairs, and lays him on the prophet's bed. The exact piece of mental and physical real estate where the promise was originally spoken. And there is a fascinating escalation in her communication that we really have to look at.
Her cognitive framing is just masterful here. She goes to her husband to ask for transportation to Elisha. Her husband is confused because, it isn't a religious holiday.
Right.
But she doesn't disclose the trauma. She simply tells him, "It shall be well."
It shall be well.
But later, when she encounters Gehazi, Elisha's servant, Her language actually shifts. Gehazi asks if everything is okay, and she delivers this definitive present tense declaration. She says, "It is well."
It is well. Her son is dead in an upstairs bedroom, and she is looking a man in the eye and saying, "It is well."
Yeah.
The sermon calls this speaking faith before the manifestation. To strip away the religious jargon, she is basically utilizing a deliberate act of the will to refuse her current reality the right to dictate her ultimate reality.
Exactly. She won't let the crisis speak louder than the original promise.
She is aggressively guarding her focus.
She is. She bypasses her husband because he doesn't have the capacity to fix a dead child. And she bypasses Gehazi because Gehazi lacks what the text calls the anointing.
Meaning what, in practical terms?
In practical terms, Gehazi lacks the actual authority, the power, and the proximity to the divine source required to reverse the situation. He can offer sympathy, sure, but he can't offer a resurrection.
So she cuts out the middlemen who can only offer pity, and she aims straight for the power source.
Exactly, and this ancient strategy directly translates to the modern day, which the sermon illustrates with a deeply raw testimony from Pastor Lenore herself.
Yes, she shares a really vulnerable account of her own breaking point when their business was failing.
The panic she describes is just palpable.
Bouncing checks, the relentless cycle of robbing Peter to pay Paul, literally driving to 3 or 4 different banks in a single day, just furiously trying to keep the plate spinning in her own human strength.
And eventually, the weight of the hustle breaks her.
It does. She drops to her knees in her office, utterly depleted, and tells God, "I'm tired. I can't do this anymore." She surrenders.
It's a profound moment of letting go. But it introduces this complex paradox when we place it side by side with the Shunammite woman.
Let's wrestle with this paradox. So, Pastor Lenore surrendered by letting go of the problem.
Right.
She threw her hands up and admitted defeat against the logistics of her failing business. But the Shunammite woman surrendered at Elisha's feet by aggressively refusing to let go of the promise.
She literally grabs the prophet by the feet and says she won't leave without him.
Exactly. So we have one woman dropping the rope and another woman gripping it until her knuckles bleed. How do we reconcile modern hustle culture, trying to control every outcome, with true, gritty persistence? Like, how do you know when to let go and when to hold tight?
Well, the key lies in identifying what you are actually trying to sustain. Pastor Lenore was trying to sustain a blessing entirely through her own human anxiety.
Running to banks, manipulating funds.
Yeah, she was operating under the illusion that she was the architect of her own survival. So her surrender required dropping the illusion of control. She had to let go of her own ego and effort.
Well, the Shunammite woman had already exhausted every human option.
Precisely.
Yeah.
A dead child represents the absolute end of human capability. There is no hustle culture for resurrection.
No, there isn't.
So her version of surrender wasn't giving up on the outcome. It was taking the dead promise directly back to the ultimate manufacturer and demanding they honor the warranty. What binds these two seemingly opposite reactions together is the shedding of pretense.
They both stopped faking it. Pastor Lenore stopped pretending she was this brilliant financial juggler, and the Shunammite woman stopped pretending she could just walk away from her deepest desire.
Yeah.
They took off the heavy backpacks and dropped them on the floor, bringing their unvarnished, ugly pain directly to the source.
And that unvarnished pain forces a response, which leads us to the climax of the narrative. So Elisha initially tries to outsource the miracle. He tells Gehazi to take his staff, run ahead, and lay it on the boy's face.
But the mother refuses to accept a delegated deliverance. She demands the prophet himself.
And she was right to do that, because Gehazi comes back and reports that the staff did nothing. The boy is still dead. So Elisha goes into the room, shuts the door, and the imagery that follows is intensely visceral.
It is highly uncomfortable to visualize. He doesn't stand in the doorway and shout a command. He gets up on the bed and lays his body directly over the child's corpse.
Eye to eye, mouth to mouth, hand to hand.
He literally lays on the problem. He overlays his living body on the dead thing until the child's flesh begins to heat up.
Then he gets up, paces the floor, and goes back and does it a second time.
Finally, the boy sneezes 7 times, which the message points out is a biblical marker for complete, total restoration.
We really have to examine why the deliverance required such intense physical proximity, friction, and heat. God doesn't always manage our pain from a safe, sterile distance.
Right.
True restoration often requires getting intimately entangled with the mess. The prophet had to bring his own life force into direct contact with the decay. Delegated authority, like Gehazi's staff, just doesn't work without personal sacrifice.
Which connects directly back to one of the most powerful maxims delivered in this sermon. Pastor Lenore says, "Don't let temporary pain make you make permanent declarations."
That is so good. If the Shunammite woman had allowed the excruciating temporary pain of her son's death to dictate her declarations, she would have agreed with the reality of the corpse. She would have called the undertaker.
Instead, she declared, "It is well," forcing her faith to override the temporary data her eyes were giving her.
And her priority is proven the moment Elisha hands the living boy back to her. She doesn't immediately snatch the child. The text says she falls at Elisha's feet and worships. She honors the Creator and the Restorer before she celebrates the restoration itself.
She kept the source higher than the symptom. And we actually see Pastor Lenore apply this exact framework in real time at the conclusion of her message.
Oh, this part was incredible.
Right during the altar call, an Amber Alert goes off on the phones across the entire sanctuary. And anyone who has been a large crowd when an emergency alert triggers knows how disruptive that is.
It completely halts everything.
But instead of ignoring the buzzing or letting it derail the service, she stops. She applies the exact theology she just preached. She interrupts the standard protocol to pray specifically for that missing person, making a permanent declaration of faith over a sudden, terrifying crisis. She modeled the Shunammite woman's blueprint right there on the stage.
It proves that this isn't just an ancient historical anecdote. It is a highly practical, aggressive strategy for confronting modern chaos, which really leaves us with a critical question for you to mull over as you step back into your week.
Let's hear it.
Take a hard inventory of your own life. Are there dead promises, maybe a collapsed career, a fractured relationship, a shattered dream that you have quietly accepted as over? Have you adjusted your posture to carry that 50-pound weight without complaining?
What would it actually look like for you to stop seeking comfort from people who lack the power to fix it? What would happen if you stopped accepting the silence and intentionally laid that specific painful problem back on the altar of the one who originally promised it to you?
Don't let the temporary pain finalize your permanent reality.
That is the absolute perfect thought to leave you with. If you want to experience the sheer power of Pastor Lenore West's delivery, and you absolutely should, you can watch the replay of this entire sermon on the Transformation Ministries YouTube channel.
Yes, check that out. And if this analysis shifted your perspective today, please take a moment to like this deep dive and subscribe to our channel so we can continue dissecting these transformative messages with you.
We also want to invite you to step out of the isolation and join the community live. You can catch the stream on the Transformation Ministries VB YouTube channel or their Facebook page every single Sunday at 10 a.m. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today on the deep dive. Put down the heavyweight, and we will see you next time.